There is something about the night shift that changes a place. Buildings that feel completely normal during the day become something else entirely after midnight. The same hallways, the same rooms, the same walls, but different. Quieter in a way that isn't peaceful. Emptier in a way that makes every sound feel deliberate. Most people who work nights will tell you the same thing. You learn the sounds the building makes when nobody else is around, and you stop jumping at them. But sometimes you hear something that isn't the building. Sometimes you see something that shouldn't be there. The three people whose stories I'm sharing tonight all showed up for a completely normal shift. They clocked in, they did their jobs, and then something happened that they will never be able to explain. Turn the lights on, lock your door, and if you work nights, maybe don't listen to this one alone. I worked security for 11 years. Shopping malls, office buildings, warehouses, hospitals. I've done overnight shifts in places that most people find unsettling, and I never once had a problem with it. You develop a kind of professional detachment after enough years on the job. Empty buildings stop feeling eerie. Strange sounds stop making you flinch. You learn to assess situations calmly and rationally and move on. I say this because I need you to understand that what happened to me during my third year working overnight security at the Harmon office complex was not the result of an overactive imagination or someone who spooks easily. I was experienced, I was calm, I was professional, and I still can't explain what I saw. The Harmon complex was a 7th-floor office building in the business district. Corporate tenants, accounting firms, law offices, a couple of tech companies on the upper floors. During the day, it was busy and loud and completely unremarkable. At night, it was mine, just me and the cameras, and the sound of the HVAC system running through the walls. My routine was standard. Hourly walk of every floor. Check the stairwells. Check the bathrooms. Check the emergency exits. Sign the log. Repeat. I had done it so many times, I could have walked the whole building blindfolded. The 4th floor was always my least favorite. I couldn't tell you exactly why. Nothing had ever happened there. It looked identical to every other floor. Same carpet. Same rows of office cubicles. Same dark windows overlooking the street below. But there was something about the quality of the silence on that floor that felt different from the rest of the building. Heavier somehow, like the air up there hadn't been disturbed in a long time, even though people worked there every day. I always did the 4th floor last. It was a Tuesday night in February. Around 2 a.m., I had done floors 1 through 3 without incident, and I took the stairwell up to 4, pushed through the door, reached around the frame and hit the light switches. Half the lights came on. The far end of the floor stayed dark. That had never happened before. I made a note to call maintenance in the morning and started my walk using my flashlight for the dark section. I was about halfway down the main aisle, between the cubicles, when I heard it. Typing. Not the building settling, not the HVAC. Typing. The specific rhythmic sound of fingers on a keyboard, coming from somewhere in the dark section of the floor ahead of me. I stopped walking. I stood completely still and listened. The typing continued, steady, unhurried, like someone in the middle of a task, like someone who had no idea they weren't supposed to be there. I called out, identified myself as security, said that the building was closed and whoever was there needed to show themselves. The typing stopped. Silence. I swept my flashlight across the dark section of the floor. Rows of empty cubicles, empty chairs, dark screens on every desk, nobody visible anywhere. I walked forward slowly and checked every cubicle in the dark section one by one. Every single one was empty. Every computer screen was dark, and when I touched the mice, none of them woke up. They had all been in sleep mode for hours. Nobody had been using them, but I had heard typing, clear and unmistakable, from this section of this floor. I finished my check, noted the incident in my log, and continued my shift. I told myself it was audio bleed from somewhere else in the building. Sounds travel strangely in empty spaces. There was a rational explanation. 3 weeks later, it happened again. Same floor, same time, same dark section. Typing coming from empty cubicles, stopping the moment I called out. Nobody there when I checked. I started asking the day shift security team if they had experienced anything unusual on the 4th floor. Most of them laughed it off. But one older guard named Pete, who had worked the building for 6 years before me, went quiet when I mentioned it. He told me that 2 years before I started working there, a man had died on the 4th floor. An accountant. He had been working late alone and suffered a cardiac event at his desk. By the time anyone found him the next morning, he had been there for hours. Pete said he had heard the typing too, twice in his first year. Never reported it officially because he didn't want to sound crazy. I requested a transfer to a different building the following month. I still work security. I still do night shifts. I just never take the 4th floor last anymore. I have worked as a commercial cleaner for 19 years. Office buildings, schools, medical centers, government facilities. Night shift exclusively for the last 12 years because the pay differential is better. And honestly, because I prefer working when the buildings are empty. No people in the way, no one watching over your shoulder. Just you and the work and the quiet. I am not someone who gets unsettled easily. 19 years of cleaning empty buildings at night will cure you of any tendency toward nervousness pretty quickly. I have been alone in more dark buildings at more strange hours than most people will ever experience, and I have never once felt genuinely afraid. Until the night I was cleaning the 3rd floor of the Meridian Medical Center. Meridian was a private medical facility, outpatient services during the day, completely empty at night, except for the cleaning crew. I had been assigned there for about 8 months, and I knew the building well. My section was the 3rd floor, which housed consultation rooms, a waiting area, a nurse's station, and a long corridor of examination rooms that ran the length of the building. It was a Wednesday night in late September. Around midnight, I was working my way down the examination room corridor, starting from the far end and moving toward the nurse's station. Standard routine. Mop the floor, clean the surfaces, move to the next room. Door open while I clean, door closed when I leave. I was in examination room 7 when I heard the door to examination room 9 open. Not the building settling, not an air vent. The specific sound of a door handle turning and a door swinging open on its hinges. Clear and unmistakable. I stepped out of room 7 and looked down the corridor. The door to room 9 was open. The light inside was on. That stopped me completely. I had cleaned room 9 20 minutes earlier. I had turned the light off when I left. I had closed the door. I was certain of it, because closing the doors was part of my routine. And I had done it the same way 8 months, without exception. The light was on and the door was open. I walked slowly toward room 9 and stopped in the doorway. The room was empty. Examination table, counter with supplies, 2 chairs for patients, all exactly as it should be. Nobody inside, but the light was on. I turned it off, pulled the door shut, heard the latch click, went back to my cot. I was in room 8 10 minutes later when I heard it again. Door handle, hinges, the sound of a door opening. Room 9 again. Light on again. Door open again. Empty again. I am a practical person. I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in faulty wiring and mechanical failures and draft causes and all the rational things that make lights turn on and doors open in empty buildings at night. But the third time it happened, I was standing in the corridor, watching room 9 when the handle turned. I saw it turn. I watched the door swing open from the inside. I watched the light flicker on. And there was nobody in that room. I called my supervisor and told him I needed someone else to finish the 3rd floor that night. I told him the lights in room 9 were malfunctioning. He sent another cleaner up without asking questions. The next week, I asked to be reassigned to a different floor. I told them the 3rd floor cleaning route was too long for one person. They accommodated the request. I found out 6 months later from another cleaner who had worked at Meridian longer than me that examination room 9 had been the room where a patient died during a routine procedure 3 years before. A young woman. Something went wrong. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. The other cleaner told me that the room had been closed for 6 months after the incident, sealed, unused. She said that when they finally reopened it, the lights kept turning on by themselves. Facilities had replaced the wiring twice. It didn't help. I took the warehouse job because I needed money, and it was the only overnight position I could find that was hiring immediately. Distribution center, massive building on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place that processes thousands of packages a night and runs 24 hours a day with rotating shifts. I was on the overnight team, 11 at night to 7 in the morning. I want to be clear that I was not alone in this building. There were maybe 30 other workers on my shift at any given time. It was loud. It was busy. Conveyor belts running constantly. Forklifts moving through the aisles. Plenty of people around. Which is why what happened was so disturbing. Because whatever I saw it surrounded by people. In a lit building. In the middle of a busy shift. And nobody else saw a thing. It started about 3 weeks into the job. I was working in the sorting area near the back of the warehouse. My job was to redirect packages that came off the main conveyor belt onto the correct secondary belts based on their destination codes. Repetitive work. You get into a rhythm. Your hands move automatically and your mind goes somewhere else. I was in that rhythm on a Thursday night, around 3 a.m., when I looked up and saw a man standing at the end of the aisle. He was tall, dark work clothes, similar to what everyone on the shift wore. He was standing completely still, facing me from maybe 50 feet away, just watching, not moving, not working, just standing there, looking in my direction. I assumed he was a supervisor, doing a floor check. I looked back down at my work. When I looked up again 30 seconds later, he was gone. I forgot about it immediately. Busy shift, moving on. 2 nights later, I saw him again. Same aisle, same position, same completely still posture, same dark work clothes. Watching. This time I kept my eyes on him and raised a hand to acknowledge him the way you do with coworkers across a noisy floor. He didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there. I watched him for maybe 10 seconds. Then a forklift moved through my line of sight for 2 seconds. When it passed, he was gone. I asked my coworker Sandra, who worked the station next to mine, if she had seen the tall guy standing at the end of the aisle. She looked at me blankly, said she hadn't seen anyone standing there. The third time I saw him, I decided to walk toward him. He was in the same spot, same posture, watching. I stepped away from my station and started walking in his direction. I was maybe 20 feet away when a supervisor called my name from behind me, asking why I had left my station. I turned to respond. Took maybe 5 seconds. When I turned back, the aisle was empty. I described the man to my supervisor. Tall, dark work clothes, always standing still, always watching, always in the same spot. My supervisor's expression changed in a way I noticed immediately. He told me to get back to my station and finish the conversation. After the shift ended, I was walking to my car when one of the older workers, who had been at the warehouse for years, fell into step beside me. He said he had overheard me describing the man to the supervisor. He asked me which aisle I had seen him in. I told him. He nodded slowly and told me that 4 years ago, a worker had been killed in that aisle. A forklift accident. The driver hadn't seen him. It was over in seconds. He said the man had worked at that warehouse for 11 years before the accident. He said other people had seen him too, always in the same spot, always watching, always gone before you could get close enough to be certain of what you were seeing. I quit that job the following week. I have never worked a night shift in a warehouse since, and I never will. Subscribe for new true scary stories every week and leave your own experience in the comments below.